Welcome to Magnificat.tv News, dedicated to offering news of the Church. Today is Wednesday, May 29th, 2019. Cardinal Ike, Archbishop of Utrecht, has warned about the apostasy that could occur in the Church if it continues on the way of abandoning tradition. The Church in Germany is increasingly divided. While most of the bishops are in favor of breaking with the tradition, some are opposed to it. 2 more missionaries have been killed this week in Africa. A 77-year-old Spanish religious woman was slain, and a young priest was tortured, making him drink acid. A new way to treat the deceased has been approved in the United States. They will be transformed into fertilizer for plants. The Church will have to take a stand. Cardinal Ike, Archbishop of Utrecht, has warned about the apostasy that could occur in the Church if it continues on the way of abandoning tradition.
Cardinal Ike, Archbishop of Utrecht in the Netherlands, is one of the cardinals most active defending the Catholic faith in the midst of the attacks it is suffering inside of the Church. In an interview for LifeSite News, he addresses current doctrinal, moral, and liturgical crises.
Following the document from the German bishops about the feasibility of Protestants being able to take communion and the blessing of homosexual unions, the cardinal says that he wrote to the Pope. I asked him to clarify these issues, making something as simple as recalling the documents of the Church's teachings. So far, there hasn't been any response, at least publicly. And this means that there is still great confusion among Catholics on these matters. I deeply regret it because I like transparency.
I have spoken about apostasy inside the Church because there are cardinals who advocated for the blessings of homosexual unions. I was referring to the Catechism Article 675 as a warning. It says that just before the apocalypse, voices will raise inside the Church itself, even among the highest authorities, which will express opinions differing from the ones of the Catholic doctrine. I did it as a warning. Let's be careful not to find ourselves in that situation.
Amoris Laetitia doesn't say specifically that people who are divorced and civilly remarried, whose first marriages haven't been declared null, can receive communion. It doesn't go that far. But, based in a few elements and a footnote, some think that it can be inferred that it is possible, that it is allowed.
He adds, today we see Episcopal conferences publishing documents that say if those people have followed a path of spiritual companionship with a priest and have sought discernment with him, they can receive communion at some point. Others have said exactly the opposite. Well, what is true in A cannot be false in B. I think it is important for people to know what to expect.
The Pope himself has supported the Episcopal conferences that choose the liberal interpretation. He did it in a letter to the Episcopal Conference of Argentina. In fact, the bishops from that conference declared that, following a path of companionship with a priest, there is a possibility that a divorced and civilly remarried person may receive communion.
The Pope also says in his letter that this is the right interpretation. However, a letter from the Pope to an Episcopal conference is not part of the teachings. A distinction should be made between an opinion that the Pope may express at some point on one side of an argument and his teachings, the statements that truly belong to his teaching authority, which are on the other side of the argument, the teaching themselves. This is not one of those.
But this doesn't clarify anything. Therefore, I think the Pope must bring clarity in terms of doctrine through a statement that may say with certainty what belongs with the teachings. It would say to ordinary teachings or to authentic teachings. It goes without saying that these are not dogmas or extraordinary expressions, but only expressions of the authentic magisterium.
The Church in Germany is increasingly divided. While most of the bishops are in favor of breaking with the tradition, some are opposed to it.
On May 16th, while talking to some reporters at his Erfurt diocesan annual press meeting, Erlich Nehmeyer, the German bishop, said that female priests are theologically conceivable in the Catholic Church. And he added that there are many individuals in Germany who desire the female ordination. Me too, he added.
However, the prelate recalled that the Catholic Church in Germany is integrated into the Universal Church. Nehmeyer, ex-auxiliary bishop to Cardinal Karl Lehmann in Mainz, explained that in some parts of the world, for example, in Eastern Europe, female priests are still absolutely unthinkable. German integration into the Universal Church may be an obstacle, he added.
In respect to married priests, the German prelate said that he is in favor of ordaining married pastoral assistants and deacons. He said, "I would do it if it was allowed." Bishop Nehmeyer was also pleased with the women's protest that took place this week against the banning of female ordination in the Catholic Church.
At the same time, 2 German bishops have expressed opposition against this church that is liberal and breaking with the tradition. The Bishop of Regensburg, Monsignor Voderholzer, from the diocese where Cardinal Mueller was bishop, raised his voice once more against the majority of German bishops' decision to begin a synodal discussion in reference to sexual morality and celibacy. While speaking last May 11th at the Austrian monastery of Heiligenkreuz, Bishop Voderholzer said, "A synodal process that points toward inventing a new church is a path to destruction. It separates Christians, divides the church, and in the end, it also harms our society."
Voderholzer insisted in the responsibility of each bishop, a responsibility that cannot be replaced by a synod. In addition, he made clear that the church in Germany wouldn't advance an inch if they pretended to give themselves female priesthood. And he recalled that Jesus Christ chose men and gave them apostolic authority, also in light of the internal logic of priestly ministry. The German prelate expressed that the Lord made a decision going against almost all of the cultures of the time, which were aware of female priesthood. He added, "The church doesn't have the right to separate from this precept. This is valid today and was always valid."
Another bishop who has spoken out against the majority is the Augsburg bishop Konrad Zarza, who denied that there was unanimity in the synodal path the episcopate in his country wants to start.
Monsignor Zarza qualified as a label fraud the so-called synodal path that the German church will start in order to revise all sexual morality, as announced last March by the president of the German Episcopal Conference, Cardinal Reinhard Marx.
Marx, who belongs to the school of cardinals that advises the Pope, announced that the German bishops are determined to follow a binding synodal path in reference to matters of sexual morality, contraception, cohabitation, homosexuality, female priesthood, priestly celibacy, for which they will have 3 debate sessions.
One of the sessions about celibacy will be led by Bishop Felix Glenn, who announced one day that he wouldn't ordain again a seminarian with a traditional mentality. Another one will be about sexual morality, led by Bishop Joseph Mode. And the last one will be led by Bishop Wiseman, about issues concerning power and engagement. All in concert with the Central Committee of German Catholics, whose president, Thomas Sternberg, is famous for his progressive stance about married priests, communion to unremarried divorcees, and many other issues.
2 more missionaries have been killed this week in Africa. A 77-year-old Spanish religious woman was slain, and a young priest was tortured, making him drink acid.
The Spanish missionary Inés Neves Sancho, 77 years old, belonging to a French congregation, has been beheaded in the town of Nola, Barbarati Diocese, in the Central African Republic.
The lifeless body of the Burgalese missionary was found horrendously mutilated on Monday in the room where she taught sewing in this town close to the border with Cameroon. The missionary had been working in the country for 26 years.
The young priest Landry Abel Ikwel, 34 years old, has been killed in Mozambique. He was a member of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary congregation and director of an Institute for the Blind. He was forced to drink acid, and then he was killed with a machete.
A new way to treat the deceased has been approved in the United States. They will be transformed into fertilizer for plants. The church will have to take a stand.
Washington State has become the first public establishment in the world to approve a law that regulates the use of dead human bodies as fertilizer. Governor Jay Inslee has signed the law that will come into effect next May. The authorized companies will be able to implement a process that transforms the body by mixing it with other products, such as wood chips and straw, into about 2 barrels of fertile soil.
Katrina Spade, founder and general director of the company Recompose, who brought the idea to the governor, said to EFE that if all Washington residents opted for recomposition after death, in only 10 years, we would save more than 500,000 metric tons of CO2.
In addition to the human compost, alkaline hydrolysis has been legalized, which dissolves the bodily tissues with a mix of potassium hydroxide and water at high temperatures. 2 hours later, only bones are left.
Our editorial this week is dedicated to the last killing of Catholics in Africa, which have taken the lives of a missionary and a priest.
La semana pasada dediqué este comentario a lo que está pasando en la Iglesia, en el mundo, a los martirios, a los mártires y a los martirios africanos. Terribles por el número, la crueldad, y terrible también por la indiferencia con que el mundo contempla lo que está allí sucediendo. Pero es que en estos días se han vuelto a repetir y posiblemente no serán, por desgracia, los últimos. Una religiosa española de 77 años ha aparecido degollada en Burkina Faso. Y muy pocos días después, un joven sacerdote en Mozambique fue torturado haciéndole beber ácido para después ser ejecutado. La situación es tan grave que algunos obispos han pedido a los católicos y a los sacerdotes religiosos y religiosas de forma especial que tengan la máxima prudencia y que incluso eviten llevar públicamente signos distintivos religiosos. Bueno, no sé si servirá de algo, porque la mayoría de ellos, lógicamente, están trabajando en lugares difíciles, muy aislados y expuestos a todo tipo de peligros, por ejemplo, mientras están celebrando la Santa Misa. Pero algo tenemos que hacer, es decir, no podemos permanecer indiferentes mirando hacia otro lado. Cuando una persona o cuando un pueblo está sufriendo tanto, quizá lo peor es esa indiferencia general que hace ver que tú o tu pueblo o lo que tanto están pasando no les importa. Un caso parecido a lo que sucede, por ejemplo, en Venezuela. Algo tenemos que hacer y lo primero y lo más importante que tenemos que hacer es rezar por ellos. No olvidarles con nuestras oraciones, tenerles presentes todos los días. Son hermanos nuestros que están derramando su vida por Cristo. Pero también tenemos que hacer algo más y es revisar nuestra vida comparándola con la suya. Si ellos, por amor a Jesús, no huyen, pienso en esta mujer, 77 años, que estaba allí y que allí ha dado su vida por el Señor y por aquel pueblo al que servía, pues si ellos son capaces de hacer esto, nosotros tenemos que tener su ejemplo delante de nuestra mirada para hacer mucho menos que ellos, pero para hacer lo que tenemos que hacer. No vamos a sufrir el martirio de hacernos beber ácido o del fusilamiento o de la ejecución. Vamos a sufrir el martirio de la ironía, el martirio de la burla, que son cosas pequeñas, o quizá algo que no es tan pequeño, como por ejemplo le ha pasado a ese médico argentino que ha perdido su trabajo y ha sido condenado a 1 año de cárcel por haberse negado a hacer un aborto. Bueno, eso ya no es tan pequeño, pero no es desde luego tan grave como las torturas, el martirio que están padeciendo en África. Es decir, cuando contemplas esos ejemplos tan extraordinarios, lo tuyo se relativiza y aparece en la medida en que de verdad tiene que estar. Aunque nos parezca grande, es poca cosa. En estos momentos, en vísperas de las elecciones europeas, se está discutiendo mucho y está siendo motivo de campaña electoral en varios países de Europa si tienen que venir todos los emigrantes que quieran a Europa. Lo mismo podríamos decir de Estados Unidos. Es evidente, a mí me parece realmente evidente que no puede entrar en Europa toda África, lo mismo que no puede entrar en Estados Unidos toda Latinoamérica. Tiene que haber una emigración regulada, aunque esa regulación tenga que ser generosa. Bueno, pero hay algo que sí que podemos dejar entrar, y es el ejemplo de los africanos. Es decir, estos que quieren venir a Europa, estos tienen que ser aceptados, los que vengan legalmente, tienen que ser aceptados, pero no asimilados, para que se conviertan en unos hombres y mujeres que viven tibiamente su fe como la viven los europeos. Antes que dejarles llegar a ellos, o a la vez que les dejamos llegar a ellos, tenemos que acoger su ejemplo. Dejemos entrar su ejemplo en una Europa que languidece en su fe y también en el número de personas, porque la tasa de natalidad va cada vez más en picado. En esta Europa, el ejemplo de los africanos, que no se rinden al mundo y que no se rinden a otras religiones que se les quieren imponer por la fuerza, este ejemplo tiene que sacudirnos, quitarnos la pereza, sacudirnos de esa mediocridad, de esa mundanización en que estamos introducidos. Bueno, yo creo que de verdad es la hora en la cual África tiene que salvar a Europa, y desde luego tiene que salvar la Iglesia africana a la Iglesia europea. Es la hora de África. Dejémonos evangelizar por ellos. No saben muchas cosas de teología, no saben quizá lo que es una perícopa, y no entienden de disquisiciones eruditas y exquisitas en nombre del discernimiento para poder hacer lo que te piden tus instintos con la conciencia tranquila. No son así, son muy sencillos, pero saben dar la vida y saben derramar la sangre por amor al Señor, por amor a Cristo. Este es el ejemplo que tenemos que dejar entrar en nuestra alma y en nuestra vieja Europa, y también habría que decir en el resto del mundo cristiano. Vuelvo a repetir, es la hora de África, y somos nosotros los que en esta hora tenemos que dejarnos ayudar por ellos. Hasta la semana que viene, si Dios quiere.
If you want to stay on top of what's happening in the church, you can do so on our news website, www.catolicos-on-line.org. Until next week, God willing.